Nice. Babe, when you're freaking out, no, whatever. Okay, let's do this, baby. All right, I believe we're doing it. Where did my mouse go? All right, let's kick it. Let's kick it. All right. Ooh. All right. Yo, what's good, gamers? What's good? My name is Dr. Ryan Sproul, Psych Sensei. Welcome to the stream, baby. Today, we are covering how mindfulness gets stimulated. How video games stimulate flow and mindfulness while you play. We're going to continue this article. We're going to see if we can finish it. Hopefully we can. If not, we are here to talk stories and hopefully answer all the questions that you might have. I'm excited. We're streaming on YouTube. We're streaming through Twitch, and now we're also streaming through TikTok. So hopefully you can catch me wherever you want. If you want to learn more about me or fill out a free consultation form and figure out how to find your next win condition and start working towards it today, you can find that on my website, psychsensei.com. All right. Well, hopefully we can, what you say? We can jump into this bad boy, get started. But hope everyone's doing well. Hope everyone's doing all right. And if not, I hope your day gets better. Okay. So I think we kind of left off still in the introduction because we were talking stories and hanging out, which was really fun. So let's just pick it up. All right. I think it's from here, from a negative perspective. Okay. From a negative perspective, unfavorable effects detected in the literature on video games are grouped into 4 blocks. Oops. Grouped into 4 blocks. Psychological abilities impairment, dependence, negative emotions, and well-being deterioration. Bro, it's like these people have been in my league games recently. Dependence, negative emotions, and well-being deterioration. Okay, regarding the first aspect, the literature indicates that they do not facilitate learning to think. Learning to think. That's interesting. Okay, what does that mean? Intensive gaming is also linked to poor memory and attention, as well as to cognitive and academic skill impairment. And this last aspect matches another study. I mean, I can see that. It really just kind of depends on what you're using the game for. And I think if you're using the game to not learn, probably. But if you're using the game to actually learn to do something, probably not. So I think this comes down to purpose, honestly. But I mean, I feel like this is like the crux of the argument. And what I mean by that is like, if video games are doing the psychological ability impairment because they do not facilitate learning to think, and instead is linked to poor memory and attention. Maybe I'll just highlight this with yellow so we have a differentiation. Poor memory and attention, as well as cognitive and academic skill impairment, then it goes back down to what you're playing games for. Because if you're doing that to not study, if you're doing that to not pay attention or not to remember, and you're just doing that to vibe, then yeah, you are gaming because you want to do those things. You're not actually gaming to learn or gaming to play. You're gaming to avoid to do stuff, which makes sense. So I think with all these studies of like, oh, does gaming cause not learning? Does gaming cause poor attention and memory? I really think it comes down to the purpose and the intention of why people are using the games and why people are playing. Like, if you don't have the intention to do so, of course it's not going to facilitate mindfulness or flow state. Fair. Or learning, because that's not your purpose. In relation to dependence, there is no consensus among scholars as to whether or not the possible addiction generated by video games is a mental health problem or represents a gambling disorder. Okay, so now they're linking this to addiction. And addiction comes back down to this. So I'm gonna put a couple of different tallies. This is the second time right here. Okay, let's go on. It is noteworthy that males appear to be more addicted than females, although dependence in both sexes decreases with increased education levels. That's interesting. That's interesting. Dependence decreases with education. Huh. I wonder why. I wonder. I wonder if it's because, like, more educated people have other things to do, or they know they're more mindful in why they're using video games, maybe? I don't know. Interesting. Okay. Video games provoke feelings of guilt for having invested too much time in them or implying the loss of school classes. Again, this is a purpose thing. Like, if you're feeling guilty for playing games, I think you lost. Maybe if guilty. Playing. What are you playing for? Because if there's an inherent guilt and shame of why you're doing something, then you're feeling bad because you're doing it, or you're not excited or happy that you're doing it. So then that makes me think about what you're doing it for, and if you lost it, or if you're doing it instead of doing the thing that you want to be doing, then that makes sense of why there's guilt, you know? But if there's guilt, and that's why, if you're playing and you're experiencing guilt, that also means to me, or it makes me think that you've lost the plot of, like, what you're playing for, and the purpose and the intention is gone. And as we talked about before, the way that flow or mindfulness occurs is when you're intentional, you're present, and you're aware of what is happening. But as soon as you don't do that, how can you have flow? Yo, what's good, First Anomaly? I see you, baby. I see you lurking. What's good? Hope you're doing all right. All right. They're also associated with higher anxiety levels, negativity, and aggressiveness. Interesting. Regarding this last mentioned aspect, some studies link aggressiveness to exposure to violent video games. Oh my God, if I have to see this one more time. Like, I'm not saying that it's not possible that video games cause you to be aggressive or whatever, but I'm also wondering if aggressive people play video games. And then it comes back down to the purpose. Like, are you playing video games to be violent and aggressive, or to express that part of you, or to get it out of you, or are you using it, for something else? So I think it comes down to purpose of what you're using it for, Okay. In relation to well-being and deterioration, players themselves point out that the use of video games can be detrimental and affect their physical, mental, and social well-being. Fair. Okay. I really do think, from this one paragraph in general, is like, if people actually knew what they're playing for, and then if they understood what they're playing for, create actually structures and processes around how they wanted to train and what they wanted to get out of their experience, I bet you there'd be a lot less negative impacts of video games in general. But because I feel, but because my hypothesis is that people are playing video games because they're just playing, and they're not really have a purpose, or they lose sight of the purpose, or they don't really understand why they're playing, I think that's where the negative effects of video games come. Or they're using video games for bad things, like for the aggression or expression of aggression, or I get to be aggressive with complete anonymity in this game. Okay, then you're using it for something nefarious. But if you're using it for actually learning, growing, getting better at a skill, and that's your intention, that's your focus, I think you're probably going to get into flow state more. You're probably going to be healthier in your video game more than just playing, you know? Yo, what's good, Allie? What's good? Thanks for the hearts, baby girl. Thank you. What's good? I hope you're doing well. All right. Really, honestly, all these mindfulness things, and does it cause mindfulness and flow? It really starts with a purpose. It really starts with the intention. If you don't have that, you can't flow. You can't be aware. You can't be present. Period. And look, you don't even have to do mindfulness through like breathing and stuff. You could do things like mindful eating. You could do things like mindful walking or mindful sitting. That's just you just being present on a walk, looking at things, observing things, being aware of how your body feels. Mindful eating is basically like that activity in school where like, okay, here's a Hershey Kiss. And now I want you to unwrap the Hershey Kiss. What does it sound like as it unwrap it? What does it feel like in your hands? Okay, I want you to smell it. Okay, what does the chocolate smell like? Okay, now I want you to put the chocolate in your mouth, and I don't want you to chew it. I just want you to move it around your tongue, and what does it feel like? You know, like that's mindfulness, but you're just using your taste buds to do it. It's the same thing. What's the purpose of this? A, it's gonna wolf down that, Hershey's Kiss, but also the reason why you're doing it is because you get to, like, really enjoy and process what the sensations are of eating the Hershey Kiss. Hi, my Twitch finally works. How do you feel today, Sensei? I am even better that you're here, my guy. I'm better that you're here. I'm happy that your Twitch is working. It's the little things in life, I swear to God. You know? Every day's a great day when you're above ground. Quote unquote pitbull. But how about you, man? Is your day good now that your Twitch is working? Hope so. Okay. The concept of mindfulness is strongly rooted in Buddhism psychology, although it shares conceptual parallels with the idea from various physiological and psychological traditions. Listen, it is rooted in Buddhism, and there is a spiritual aspect to mindfulness. At the same time, just like yoga or whatever, you can take away the spiritual aspect of it, and you still get the positive benefits of the thing, you know? I'm trying to strengthen my mentality. Well, baby, you came to the right stream. What are you working on? Well, how would you like to strengthen your mentality? Maybe I got some tips and tricks for you, my guy. And then what do you mean strengthen your mentality? It's a big phrase, man. It's a big phrase. Okay, this word derives from the Pali word. That's funny. That's a Hawaiian word too, Pali. Sati, translated on the other hand as memory, and on the other hand as consciousness, awareness, or knowledge. Wow. Interesting. If you really think about it, though, that's what you really need. You need to be conscious, aware, and have knowledge and memory to be present and, like, flowing, you know? Because it is almost like, even if you take those words, right? Consciousness and aware, that's like presence to me. You're like right in the middle. And then you have knowledge. Maybe that's like future thinking, right? You have to have knowledge of what you want to do and what could happen. But at the same time, you also have memory. So a little bit of the past. So when I think about mindfulness in general, you are present here, but also there are some aspects of the past and the future, but not so much where they become heavy, or they weigh you down, or they like hold you back from stuff. Instead, it's more of the, I'm considering the memory and I'm considering the knowledge, but I'm more emphasizing the conscious and awareness of where I am right here, right now. I think that's true. Like, you do need that little bit of past and future, but it's more so here. And I feel like that is like games in general. Like, you do need a little bit of the future, a little bit of the past, but it's about being mindful. The guy, a guy under a tree was right. Don't space out for too long or 26 years will fly by. Whew. That's deep. That's deep. But at the same time, is it just being here under the tree, enjoying and having the years come to you, having all that experience, you know? Because also, 26 years may fly by if you're having fun. I have anxiety and I want to learn to be more secure in my life, but I also suffer from league tilt. Ooh, interesting. Interesting. Okay. What do you mean secure in your life? Is that like confident in yourself? And then when you say league tilt, are those two things connected or are they different? How much fun can you have under a tree? Bro, let me tell you, you can have a lot of fun under their tree. Just depends what you define as fun. I mean, sometimes, sitting under a tree and just vibing is great, you know? Sometimes it's about the little things in life and taking a break, take it a bit slower to enjoy that tree life, you know what I mean? Okay. Consciousness, from this perspective, is the conscious registering of stimuli, including the 5 physical senses, the kinesthetic senses, and the activities of the mind. Yes, being very present, being very here. Absolutely. Okay. From the Western psychological perspective, mindfulness is usually defined as the maintenance of attention on the experiences happening in the present moment, accepting them as they occur, or, in other words, without judgment, or without judging them. I like that little twist too. It's about the non-judgment of yourself. So a little bit, I guess, like instead of spirituality in Western mindfulness, they put the non-judgmental spin on it, which is cool. I get small beauties. I've spaced out most of my life though, and being present is very important. And the best part too is like, even if when you space out, you get to catch yourself and be like, "Oh, am I doing it again?" That's a fun thing. The small moments of consciousness, right? Small moments of consciousness. Oop. The experiences can both internally, whether mentally or bodily, and externally, can occur both. Oops. Okay, this type of disposition is often contrasted with an autopilot state. Absolutely. I want to make that a different color. Yes. So, autopilot, the opposite of mindfulness. So, when you've gone to autopilot, or man, that whole I don't know where my life has been, or where am I going? That's I guess your first smoke detector beep 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 that we've missed the point if you go into autopilot, especially when you're playing your game too, or I guess in life when you're autopiloting things. That is the opposite of mindfulness or presence. So that's just a red flag for you. But I like that they have it here. Okay, this type of disposition is often contrasted with an autopilot state in which behavior occurs mechanically and without attention to it. Among other aspects, mindfulness implies a reunification of direct control. For example, it does not aim for a person to control his or her reactions, feelings, or emotions, but to experience them as they occur. Oof. I think that's the whole thing, right? Interesting. Okay. Okay. Not control. Experience. That's an interesting twist. Honestly, on mindfulness. Like it's not about control. It's about awareness and experiencing them. That's a really interesting twist on it. Because I think maybe if you really think about that too, like when you're in flow state or when you're being very present or very mindful of what you're doing, it's not about controlling that experience or about controlling the flow state. It's about enjoying it and being in it, right? Like what I mean by that is like research has also shown that the number one thing that throws you out of flow state is realizing or becoming aware that you're in flow state. So once you realize it and you think about it like, wow, I'm flowing, that kicks you out. Why? Because you're now being more present or being aware of the flow versus being aware and a present in the thing that you're doing in flow, So I like that twist. So instead of, maybe you can mesh the concept of the OG mindfulness Buddhism, like mindfulness and flow, with Western psychological mindfulness and flow, of flow or mindfulness being the experience of being present and aware of what you're doing without judgment and without trying to control the experience, but instead just being present of how the experience is unfolding in front of you. So maybe instead of spirituality, maybe we just put in presence of experience, non-judgment, to regain control. Maybe. I'm assuming I was doing the mindfulness wrong with control. Interesting. Tell me more. What do you mean, first anomaly? What do you mean you're doing it wrong with control? As in you're trying to be mindful of how you can control the situation? I mean, I think that's where the control piece is. You know what I mean? What I mean by that is like, perhaps the control piece is when I am mindful of the present state and I'm not judging what is happening in it. Maybe then I can make better decisions about what I want to be doing in it versus how I want to control and change everything. Maybe that's what I'm thinking about. Because it is really interesting if you think about the difference between East and West. Definitions of mindfulness usually refer to a state of consciousness, but it can also be understood as a personality trait. Okay, before we get there, I'm a little shaky because I think you can be a mindful person, but as soon as you start saying like I start ascribing that label to you, now you're maybe saying you can have it or not, but I do think mindfulness is a skill for sure. I did not experience my emotions, but I tried to control them. That's interesting. Okay. Well, what do you mean by that? Like when you say like you don't, I think you do experience them, but I think you do experience them and you try to control them because you don't like them. So it's like you try to manually shift what you're feeling. That's really interesting, man. What do you mean by that? Woo. Okay, in the first case, it refers to the degree to which a person pays attention and is truly aware of the stimuli occurring in the present. Whereas the meaning of mindfulness as a trait represents the duration, frequency, intensity with which a person tends to engage in mindful states. Okay, I guess you could say that. Like, I'm a mindful person and I spend a lot of time being mindful. Okay, that's fair. You can say that. Fine. The mindfulness trait can be mastered with various instruments, primarily self-report questionnaires. I think the mindfulness trait. Okay, again, fair. I mean, sorry, I thought they said it could be grown, but yeah, it can be measured. It can be measured with that self-report. Fair. Okay. Benefits associated with mindfulness are diverse. Dude, I really have not heard of any articles saying that there are no benefits if you practice the mindfulness. You will get better somehow. I try to control them with my psyche instead of being in a natural state out of fear of the consequences of emotions. That's interesting. I mean, the thing I'm wondering too is like, if you're trying to control your emotions out of fear, what are you afraid of that will happen if you don't control them? And then thing after that I'm thinking about is if you do try to control them out of fear, how often does that thing they're afraid of actually happen? For example, like I'm afraid that if I express my emotions, I'm going to crash and burn and flame out and like freak out of my game. But because you're holding your emotions in, do you then freak out, crash and burn, and then you like crap your game, you know? So that's what I'm interested in. What are you afraid of by not controlling your fears? And then what actually does happen when you control them? Concealing your reaction is good. Feeling and validating your feelings, though, is good too. Absolutely. I think so. Because maybe even before you conceal, if we're going to go to the frozen route, right? Maybe it's important that you acknowledge what you feel and understand why you feel those things, and then you can do something with it. But I think if you just conceal it, you're shoving down those emotions. And listen, that also takes energy. For example, if I was going to hold out this smoothie, you know, I could hold it out for a little bit. It's kind of light, right? I could do it for a while. But as soon as, I don't know, the X hour happens, eventually it's going to get heavy. And I got to drop it, or it's going to take more energy for me to hold it up, you know? Imagine that, but with heavy emotions. This takes energy. Holding a thought takes energy. Pushing a thought away takes energy. Shoving it somewhere else takes energy. So it all takes energy, and then where's it go after? Because you're gonna get tired. So I'm thinking. To cite some specific ones, it reduces the intensity of emotional disorders, improves emotional regulation, stimulates creativity, and benefits social relationships. Dang, mindfulness BOP. Okay. IRL, I'm afraid of trusting others too much. In game, I try to stay calm and focused in every situation and try to avoid getting distracted by other players. IRL, I am afraid of trauma. In game, I'm afraid of losing my performance. Interesting. When you say losing your performance, are you equating your performance to points? And then the thing that I'm thinking about is like, if you're afraid to trust others, IRL, then my hypothesis is that you probably don't allow them to see you, or you may not communicate things that are important to you. And then the thing that you might be afraid of by trusting others, if you go one step further, might be that you get hurt by others or they let you down or something. But here's the funny thing: if they don't see you, if they don't know you, if they don't understand what you like and you don't like, then they're more likely to do things that hurt you or um, break your relationship or leave you or whatever. Um, and if you're afraid of trauma and you find those things I just mentioned traumatic, then it sounds like you may inadvertently be increasing the chance of being traumatized because, full circle, they may not know, you know? And okay, in game, you try to stay calm and focus in every situation and try to avoid getting distracted by others. That's good. That's good. The thing I'm thinking about is instead of trying to be distracted by others, the thing I'm thinking about is what do you really want to focus on in game besides staying calm? Like, what tangibly do you want to uh, do or see so you can be focused on the game situation and then remain calm versus trying to remain calm to figure out the situation. So it's kind of a chicken and egg thing, but what I'm thinking about is if you're more focused on the game, then your calmness comes not from just you trying to regulate your calmness, but it comes from you being confident in what you want to do in the game. And then if you're focused on what you want to do in the game, then the fear of you losing your points also then decreases. So it's just a different shift of perspective to see how your fears may be influencing you to do things that may make your fears more of a reality versus avoiding the avoidance and leading into these things to get what you want and accepting that the bad feelings or uncomfortable feelings may happen anyway. That's a part of it too. But I like that breakdown. I like the breakdown. I don't know. What do you think? Does that make sense? Or what do you think about what I just said? In terms of well-being, its potential to promote both health and psychological well-being in the work environment, health and well-being in children and adolescents, physical well-being, especially in populations with pain, as well as psychological well-being in general, has been evidenced. So, I mean, good things. Great things. All the benefits of from mindfulness. Do it. All right, mindfulness has also been shown to be useful in relation to the negative effects of video games. There are studies that have found a negative association between mindfulness and obsessive passion for video games. So that means when mindfulness goes up, and obsession passion for video games go down. Specific interventions designs have been developed to treat video game addiction with mindfulness presence. And there are research that has detected a lower association with mindfulness among other variables in people with internet gaming disorder and or depression. Facts. That has been confirmed. Okay, do video games have the potential to generate mindfulness? Considering non-commercial proposals, virtual relaxation spaces has been created with games to maintain sustained attention that energetically recharge participants. Interventions with games and mindfulness has been designed to increase patients' engagements in their therapy. Games have been developed to improve mindfulness and immediate results. Phone and virtual reality games based have been created to teach mindfulness to people recovering from post-traumatic stress disorder. Video games based on why meditation have been devised, implemented to study mindfulness at brain level, explaining why its association with improvements and performance on intentional tasks. And gamified applications and experimental games have been developed for participants to define their mindfulness experience in the video game. Okay, I like that. On the other hand, there are also several studies showing that virtual reality systems and their applications help induce mindfulness or increase people's mindfulness skills. And then that playing video games can enhance applied mindfulness practice, and that video game players, relative to yoga practitioners, obtain more prominent video game. Sorry, I'm freaking out. What? Relative to yoga practitioners, obtain more prominent mindfulness scores. What? Interesting. Are you saying mindfulness is better, or mindfulness is better than yoga? That's kind of nuts. That's a huge one. Okay, IRL, I was reading about the brain not properly processing experiences when they're unpleasant, and the brain tries to explain them in unrealistic ways. And I am afraid of falling into a negative cycle. Okay. In game, I do not understand what you tried to say by wording points. My flow state breaks at some point by distraction or dissatisfaction with the game state. I have better flow state when I have not played for a while and I'm excited to play some games. I also have some shame about playing time investment. That makes sense. I mean, what I'm thinking about in game, right? You're just saying my flow state breaks at some point by distraction or dissatisfaction with the game state. So what you're saying is that, I mean, as this article was talking about, you are being distracted by the dissatisfaction with the game state. In other words, what you're doing is you're judging yourself, or you're judging your players or the enemy team or whatever, and the judgment of you putting a value, good, bad, like, don't like, is distracting your focus because that's what you're thinking about, or that's where you're getting stuck. So if you want to maybe unstick yourself and help yourself get back into flow, something I'm thinking about is, what is the next thing you could focus on or think about in the game to improve your game state? So for example, is that like CS? Is that your next item? Is that thinking about playing safer to scale? Is that playing for an objective? Is that being really greedy? Like, what does that mean for you to improve your position, to get closer to your win state? Not like to win the game, but maybe closer to a more favorable position. So if you're thinking about that and the next step or the next thing, we're less likely to be thinking about the distracting things that we don't like or the judgments we be having of ourselves or the game in general, you know? So it's just it's like a catch and redirect. So catching your mind that you're thinking about this, you're being distracted, and then redirecting it towards something that's more helpful or something that's more tangible that you can do that's in your control. That's what I'm thinking. And then IRL, I mean, I'm not quite sure what you mean by like your brain explaining it in unrealistic ways, unless that's like you beating yourself up and stuff, and you're afraid of falling into negative cycles. I mean, I'm not sure what that means. I'm curious about the negative cycles you're talking about, and then what prevents you from possibly not avoiding them, but leaning into those things so you can get a different result, you know? But yeah, I mean, if you're we talked about this whole shame about playing thing, you know, where that comes from and things like that. What I'm wondering is, what are you playing for? What are you using the game for in your life, and then if we could also just accept and be chill with that, how would that affect your sense of shame? Like, are you getting the thing that you want to out of your game? And if not, how come? And then why not? That's what I'm thinking. Okay. The only localized study that offers results on the relationship between co-marketing video games and mindfulness, among other variables, was developed by Gackenbach and Brown on a sample of young American adults. According to this work, the consciousness experience of the present moment and the mindful awareness state, both during the game and as well as the ability to act without judgment during the day, are found to be more accentuant in intensive players than in occasional ones. Okay. All right. That was the introduction. Now, what does the study do? All right, the study evaluates the potential of commercial video games to generate mindfulness through their association with video game consumption variables. In the evaluation of each hypothesis, we considered whether players suffer from attention deficits or engage in a mindfulness practice as extraneous factors that may affect the results. Okay. So we have a couple of hypotheses. Number one, higher consumption of video games is directly and positively associated with higher scores on all dimensions of the mindfulness trait. More specifically, greater length of time playing video games is directly and positively associated with higher scores on all dimensions of mindfulness trait. Greater frequency of playing video games is directly and positively associated with higher scores on all dimensions of the mindfulness trait. Longer duration of video game playing sessions is directly and positively associated with higher scores on dimensions of mindfulness trait. Okay, I don't think that last one is going to be true, but we're going to find out. I'm not fluent in English either. Sorry, dude, me neither. You're good. I'm just afraid of getting attacked, becoming traumatized, having more negative life experience because of brain dysfunction or bad life circumstances. Whoa! I read that some humans can use it against you if you already have trauma, or even try to give you one to easier give you other traumas. I mean, whoa. I mean, let's slow down. Let's slow down a little bit. I mean, maybe. But I mean, if your fears of getting attacked, like, A, we don't have to believe them. B, there's things that we can do so we don't have to read the chat, or C, we can just remember that they're just hurt people trying to hurt people and has nothing to do with you. There's other things like some reframes for that in general. So you don't have to, you can be bulletproof. You don't have to take these kinds of things personally, And maybe when you do, it's time to stop playing because our psychological defenses are down, Try not to. Yeah, I mean, try not to. For sure. All right, so how did they get this stuff? They looked at 225 participants. 55.6% were women. Let's go. Wow, okay, this is a older group, 28 years old. Okay. And they did a couple of scales. The mindfulness trait, they used the 5 facets of mindfulness questionnaire. Nice. Lots of questionnaires. Okay, to look at video game consumption, they asked them a couple questions. Okay. Meditation practice, got asked if they did meditation stuff and how often. Reduced attention span. They were asked if they were diagnosed with ADHD. Love it. Good stuff. Yes, no. Not sure. And then they did some other demographics. So it really looks like they just, I'm just skimming right now. It really just looks like they just gave them surveys. Which is fine. Okay. How long ago did you start playing? Not playing. What the fuck? Okay. Okay, wait. Where's the ADHD presence? I want to see that one. This is okay. Where's the several times a week? We have 13 liars. We got 13 liars. Nah, just joking. I was just joking. We have 13 very mindful people. Crazy. Awesome. Feminine, masculine. Interesting. Okay, let's just jump to the discussion, shall we? Okay. Um, do you know whether meditation can alter natural thought processes? Can it be reversed if one would actually meditate too much or wrongly? I once had this thought and I could not find an answer. I don't think you can do meditation wrong, per se. I mean, because the practice of meditation is just you sitting down to try to practice focusing on something or managing your attention. Right? The practice of meditation is just focusing on your breath to bring attention to this present moment. And as soon as you start thinking about something else, the goal of mindfulness is not to beat yourself up to tell yourself that you're a junk at it or that you're be good at it. The purpose is after you catch yourself being distracted, the goal is to be aware of it. I'm thinking about that thing, is to acknowledge it, and then to gently redirect your mind back to the thing that you're thinking about. So the breath or whatever, with non-judgment, not no like I'm so stupid, how could I do this? I don't think you could do it wrong because you're literally just catching your focus and refocusing it on something else. And then the game is how consistently can you do it? And then for how long can you do it? That's the game. Um, I think when you're saying reversed, what I think you're thinking about is like it's a muscle, being able to control your attention or your focus. It's a muscle. You can only do it for so long because it takes energy. So basically, from a different perspective, you are training this focus muscle on how to use it for longer. So endurance, right? Or the intensity, how many times can you do it? Like that's what you're really trying to do. If you're judging yourself or if you're really thinking about the thoughts you're doing in your head, we're now doing something else, not mindfulness or meditation. So again, I don't think you can do it wrong. I don't think you can reverse it. I think you can maybe get unpracticed and unskilled in it and you need to try again, but I don't think you can meditate wrong. That's it. I think the meditation wrong comes from like the self-judgment and stuff like that. But that's it. It's just a catch and redirect. That's all meditation is. And mindfulness is. Because if you can think of it this way, if you can practice this technique of being aware of your thoughts, seeing how they affect you, and then redirecting the thought on the thing that you're thinking of or wanting to think of, now you're playing your game, right? For example, uh, the meditation, quote unquote, of non judgment of the game, quote unquote, for you would be all right, man, I just died and that was really bad. And then the game is really hard. Okay, I acknowledge that I died and that was challenging. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to. Woo! Thanks for the follow, Geki. Thank you, baby. Welcome to the stream. What I'm thinking is like you, instead of catching that thought, acknowledging it, and then refocusing it on your win condition. That's mindfulness right there. That is meditation right there. So we're just taking the practice of that out of your game into a controlled environment like a drill, and that's all we're practicing. That's it. I used to meditate quite frequently a couple of years ago, got to the point where I was actually aware of my body outside the session, but lost the ability / got rusty since I stopped. Yep, we're talking about skills, Geki. We're talking about skills. So with enough focus and practice, you can probably be very aware and very sensitive and present about physical body, your mental thoughts, or your feelings, whatever, your emotions. At the same time, if we don't keep practicing the skill, we may be less apt, or less able to pull out that skill more frequently. Like feeling my pulse with my fingertips was really cool, but kind of freaky. Whoa, yeah, that's kind of freaky. That's kind of freaky. But yeah, that's kind of what we're talking about, right? Like you being just very aware and present of your body and what's happening to you, for sure, for sure. but maybe not too much because yeah, I can feel my hair growing. Maybe be a little bit too aware. Maybe I don't want to be aware of that, right? That's kind of like that's kind of going into the whole thing of like, oh, if you could be aware of like supernatural things, would you want them to be? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I'm good not seeing all that stuff. I'd rather just be natural, not supernatural. You know what I'm saying? Okay. I think we can wrap this one up. We're in discussion now. Okay. According to the results, no differences were observed in the mindfulness trait for playing or not playing video games. Although the length of time spent playing video games was directly associated with higher mindfulness traits among non meditators. In this sense, if one does not meditate, continue to play video games seems to stimulate the mindfulness trait to some extent. To some extent. Okay, you know, the reason I'm going to rest. Have a good stream. All right, man. Thanks for popping by. See you later. See you later. Next week, Friday. Same time, same place. Have you ever looked at the book Breath by James Nestor? No, I need to. I just started reading it, but but he deep dives about that kind of stuff. Ooh, I will definitely check this out after the stream. For sure, for sure. Um, this is interesting. That if you don't meditate typically, but play video games, then your mindfulness seems to help, or that seems to help boost your mindfulness score. I mean, why I think that is even if you don't meditate, you're probably paying a lot of attention to what you're doing in the game. Thus, your mindfulness score would go up. So, mindfulness and is just being very present in what you're doing, right? So, if you're not being very present in mindfulness, but you're using an activity to be mindful of, makes sense of why your score would go up. Particularly on the dimension of mindfulness, the ability of players to attend to internal and external experiences observing seems to be slightly reduced to a greater degree among non-meditators as the length of time spent playing video games increases. You know why? This probably comes down to fatigue. It's really tiring to be super mindful all the time. So my guess is that as you continue to to continue to play your game, the mindfulness probably goes down because of the energy that it uses for you to try to pay attention and hold all the information that's happening in your game or that's on your screen, just due to fatigue. You can't do this all day because after a while, people always say like, "Oh, I'm going into autopilot," which we just defined as the opposite of flow. Okay. Similarly, the ability to act with awareness with respect to the duration of games in meditators and in ADHD and non-ADHD players, as well as with playing frequency in non-mediated players. Okay, yeah, it goes down, right? Yeah, okay, that goes down too. That makes sense. Both dimensions, closely related to attention, in our opinion, are in line with the studies indicating that intensive video game reduces this capacity. Okay, so they're saying intensive video games equals decreased mindfulness. Length of time equals decrease mindfulness. Decrease attend internal external experiences. Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay. Okay, sorry. This is act with awareness. Okay. Sorry, it's also length of video games. My bad. Reading bad. Lengths of video games. This is decrease act with awareness. Makes sense to me. Okay. Fair. Okay. Alright. The negative association with video game duration is particularly strong among players with ADHD, which seems to indicate that regular playing of video games in this group favors mechanical behavior with your attention focus elsewhere. That's cool, I guess. Let's read that one more time. What? This negative association with video game duration is particularly strong with players among players with ADHD. This seems to indicate that with regular playing of video games in this group favors mechanical behavior with their attention focused elsewhere. The negative association with video game duration is particularly strong among players with ADHD, which seems to indicate that with the habitual playing of video games in this group favors mechanical behavior with their attention found elsewhere. I feel like they need more mindfulness. That's what I'm thinking, dude. Okay, the ability to label internal experiences with words describing is, on the contrary, positively associated with greater seniority in video games, except in the ADHD group where this relationship is not detected, okay? The link could perhaps be explained through a possible identification that players establish between the content of their screens and their internal vision of their consciousness, so that the greater experience with these devices could lead to a greater ability to name what is happening in the mind. I believe there's words for that. Like implicit and explicit knowledge, kind of like that. Okay, this direct relationship with sense of seniority in video games also occurs with the ability to be non-judgmental about the inner experience, especially intense in the case of ADHD players. The stance towards inner thoughts and feelings that presents syntony with the development of the capacity to act without judgment in intensive players detected in another study. However, this link with seniority is inverse in the case of meditating gamers, something that could perhaps be explained by the inner development of the capacity for non-judgment inner experience through meditative practice than through video games, where the results of the second activity reduces the capacity in meditating video gamers. I wonder if this comes down to, like, the more experience that you have in a game, the more openness you have and less judgment you have because you've been through so much bullshit playing the game. Is that saying that people with ADHD require more mechanical demanding games to be more mindful? I'm thinking it might. Or they can do the mechanics without being mindful that they're doing mechanics. That's what I'm also thinking. I mean, maybe. That's what I'm thinking. Greater experience with these devices could lead to greater ability to name what's happening. This direct relationship with senior video also occurs with the ability to be non-judgmental of their experience. That's what I'm thinking. You're talking about this, right? The negative association with video game duration is particularly strong among players with ADHD, which seems to indicate that regular playing of video games in this group favors mechanical behavior with their attention focused elsewhere. So yeah, I'm thinking that they're still able to play their game, even though they may not be paying attention to it. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Let's see where they pulled that from. I'm kind of interested in that too now. Okay. To two central questions in the study, the meditation practice and ADHD present, it should be noted that only 25.1% of practice meditation and that the intensity of meditation when occurring is less than 1. Okay. Doesn't matter. Where's the ADHD one? But yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that maybe it's not that they need more mechanically dependent games. I'm thinking they can be more focused on the mechanics than the game itself. That's what I'm thinking. Okay. The ability to label internal experiences with words. Okay, I did that one. Okay. So I'm thinking with this one is that the people that are better at meditating or more experienced playing are better able to understand and not judge what is happening because they've been through so much BS. So they're able to be like, yep, every game has bots in it. It's fine. Yep. What do you mean they're griefing me? That happens. It's League. That's what I'm thinking. Okay. Finally, non-reactivity to inner experience is positively related to seniority in video games. A result that, in our opinion, presents correspondence with studies pointing out that video games stimulate cognitive flexibility, considering that this is applied to some degree in the non-evaluative stance toward inner thoughts and feelings. Okay. I'm also thinking that it also increases openness to experience. If I had to take a guess, that's what I'm thinking. All right, conclusion. This study represents a contribution of the study of commercial video games with the aim of generating mindfulness, a practice with many associated benefits. Although more studies are needed in this line of research to provide robust results, it's considered that the results achieved in this work could be useful for the industry, in the sense that they could be favorable, could favor their ability to design commercial video games with the capacity to stimulate mindfulness. In addition, the results could also be interesting for those gamers interested in simulating certain skills associated with meditative practice. The ability to label internal experiences with words, except in players with ADHD, the ability not to judge the internal experience in players who do not meditate, and non-reactivity to the internal experience. So those are the three big ones from here. Okay. I mean, why this is experience is like why this is good for this, at least this one. What I'm thinking is like, if you're unable to tell somebody, because at the end of the day, let's be real, all these games that we're talking about, or most esports in general, are like team-based games. So if you're unable to describe what is happening to you and why you're thinking the thing, you're not gonna have a good time in games, or you're not gonna have a good time in games with people, because how can you tell your friend, excuse me, or your teammate what's irritating you so they can stop or be different, or what you're interpreting their actions to be and how it's affecting you? That's why I think it's important to be able to label these internal experiences, and the ability not to judge the internal experience. I think in general, um, if you're able to just be more open about what is happening without putting a value, a good, bad, like, don't like, on it, then you're more able to be flexible in what you're trying to do, how you're trying to solve your problem, how you're able to approach a situation. And then if you have not reactive to the experience, not only are you thinking about it, but like doing something about it, then you're more free to do something different to meet the needs of how to solve it, which is really interesting. Okay. I think this statement, what you're saying with this one right here, because I'm rereading it again, I think that they can still do mechanical stuff without being aware of what they're doing. That's what I'm thinking. Like, the more the longer they play, the less likely they're paying attention to what you're doing. That's what I'm thinking. That says. All right, so this article, really, for me, the takeaways. Let me copy this. Let me make a new one. Let me paste this. Okay, so these are my takeaways from this article. All right, takeaways. Number one. To be mindful and present, you need this. Number one, purpose and intention comes before mindfulness. Because if you don't, okay, why purpose and intention comes before mindfulness is because that drives your focus and what you're doing to be mindful of it. So if you don't have a purpose, you don't have an intention, there's no way you can be mindful because there's no presence-based thing driving you. You're just doing the thing. Because if you, mindfulness, I guess is number two. Mindfulness without purpose / intention, that equals autopilot. Is that how you spell autopilot? I feel like I spelled that incorrectly. Let's figure out how to spell that. Ah, there you go. Okay. All right. There you go. Okay, what's happening? Jesus. Okay. All right. So, mindfulness, purpose / intention comes before mindfulness. Mindfulness without purpose and intentions equals autopilot. Why? Because if you're unintentional, you don't know what's happening, you're just doing the mechanics, you're just playing, you're not, you can't be mindful. So, there you go. What else? Oh, yeah. Number three. Number three, mindfulness has its limits. Like, it's not infinite. And what I mean by that is it takes energy to be mindful. It takes energy to be present. And there's only so long you can be in it, in flow state or whatever. Because, listen, attention is a very costly activity. So, sure, you can do it for a game, 2 games, 3 games, a series, but it has its limits. So I don't want people to think that, oh man, if I go into flow state, this is how I should always be feeling. I should always be in it, or I can sustain this for long periods of time, forever. You can't. So it's an irrational expectation that you can do this forever and ever. Sure, you can do this for a period of time, but it has its limits. And so the reason I really want to emphasize this is I don't want people beating themselves up thinking that if I was only better, if I was only stronger, if I was only a mental warrior, I could do this all day. You can't. It has its limits. And when you go into autopilot, that's an example of, listen, you ran out of gas, okay? And now we have to do restorative things to make sure you have energy to continue or to do mental first aid so you can finish this to the highest performance you can. But it is an irrational expectations that you can do this forever. I think really those are the biggest takeaways for me in this article. I mean, I'm not saying that these other things that they took away from it, like these things. Oh yeah. Like these three things, like the ability to label internal experiences, I think that's really important. But I'm thinking about like why it's important. The ability not to judge. I mean, I think that's the maybe we write here. Okay. What mindfulness is? Maybe we write a quick note right here. Okay, I like what they said. It's a combo, right? Combo of presence, awareness, knowledge, consciousness. There was one more. No, I think that's it, right? Conscious, knowledge, awareness. There might have been one more. Or it was like the Western or whatever. We wrote it down. Where is it? Where is it? What do you want? Western. Okay, here. Memory. That's the word I was looking for. Memory. Okay, it's non-judgmental. What is the other thing they said? Accepting. I guess that's kind of with. Okay. That's where it is. That's where I think I'll leave it. That's what my true mindfulness is. This it's a combination of presence, awareness, and like I said, I think I'd even write it like this. All right. If I was going to list these words out, it'd be like if this is a continuum of time, okay? And if this is more past, and this is future, and this is present, where I think these words would fall, it'd be like if the present, and if we're gonna like do these lines right, if this delineates past, present, and future, I'd say it would be like it'd be like this here, right? Then it would be memory, and then this would be knowledge. And then I think through all of this, though, the whole process would include this goes across would be non-judgment and acceptance. That's That's kind of how I would put it right there. So what I mean by that is like, if you're going to do this, the way I think true mindfulness works is it's like a combination of presence, awareness, knowledge, consciousness, and memory, conscious and memory, but it's held together with non-judgment and acceptance of yourself, the situation, etc. So if I was going to put it on like a time continuum, because I think it looks better this way, because this is kind of like true gaming in general. I think the presence, awareness, consciousness, that drives you into the here and to the now. But to have flow state and to play very, very well, you do need memory. You do need some concept of the past. You know, at the same time, you do need knowledge about how things will be in the future. But instead of staying here or here, having too much knowledge or too much memory influencing your decisions and how you feel, we're going to stay in the present here and now, openness to experience without judgment in general of ourselves, the situation, while accepting that this is where we are in the present moment, not forever, then we can move to the future while maintaining what happened and learning from it. So this is where I think the model of presence, not presence, of mindfulness looks like. So if you can keep this in your mind, this is what we're shooting for while we focus on our breathing, while we play our games. This is what flow looks like, or internally what flow could look like. So when we don't have this though, and we shut down, or we start injecting judgment and non-acceptance, or we start losing the plot of the presence and consciousness and start just doing things without thinking, okay, now we're doing the autopilot thing. An autopilot is the mechanics, the behaviors without this internal mental process. That's it. And what causes this internal mental process, or the lack thereof this internal mental process? Probably my number one now thinking about is fatigue, but it's also not being able to do this. The openness to experience. When you start judging, when you the lack thereof acceptance, that then influences the perception of this. That's what I'm thinking. Okay, whenever I go long gaming sessions, my cutoff is when my awareness / focus falls off in game, which I also agree a lot with. People don't listen to themselves and keep going. Absolutely, right? So the purpose of this is, are you aware of when you start becoming less aware? Or are you more aware of the negative things that you're telling yourself, or the doom and gloom, or about the things that your stupid teammates are doing versus what you want to be doing in game? Once we do that, we're now more aware of those things, and we're becoming less aware of the things that could be helping us. And that could be our signal of awareness that it's time, like you were saying, to take a break, because we're tired and we can't do it forever. Because, point 3, mindfulness has its limits. And that's okay. You just reached your limit. But if we keep playing this way, now we're going into autopilot. It makes sense of why we're griefing our games. Sick. I like this. Okay, well, very interesting. Very, very interesting. All right, friends. Well, that's it for me. I hope you guys had fun thinking about those types of things with me, and thinking about what affects flow, what affects your perception, how fatigue gets you, and where your mind goes when you start thinking of the negative thinking thoughts. But yeah, my goal is to come back next week Friday, same time, same place. I got really into this afternoon thinking about like how touching grass helps you. So maybe instead of mindfulness, we'll shift into that, attention control, those types of topics. But if you want to learn more about me or see what I like to do, please visit my website, psychsensei.com. Also, check me out on YouTube. And if you're streaming me on TikToks, follow my talks. But if not, you can catch me on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all those kinds of things under Psych Sensei or the Psych Sensei. Always here to give you your daily dose of esports psychology tips and tricks. Yeah, I followed you on TikTok for a while, but I forgot to get on Twitch to watch it until today. But don't worry, if you want to see me on the Twitch, on the TikToks, you can all see me there because I'm streaming there too. All right, friends. Well, thanks for coming to hang out. Shout out to Alley Cakes on the TikToks watching me live. Shout out to First Anomaly for hanging out. And shout out to you, Geki. Thanks for coming and giving me a follow, man. Appreciate you. But I'll see you guys next week, Friday, same time, same place. I'll catch you there. All right, friends. Well, take it easy. Be safe out there. And remember, stronger mental wins. Peace. Love ya. Bye.